That should be. Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends should also be, just a live action thing. I'd get Tim Burton to direct that. But I don't think cartoon. What?
I'm sorry. I always, I don't know why, but I always think Tim Burton's has died.
Not
never.
He just, Edward Scissorhands.
He just did Wednesday.
I know. It's always like it's such an old timey name. You just think like, hi, I'm Angeline, and I'm a junior.
I'm Wren, I'm a junior.
And I'm Nameera, I'm a senior.
Very cool. Nice to meet you guys.
We
Me too. So we wanted to talk about like Disney remakes today. What kind of like Disney remakes have you seen?
I think I've seen them all, and yeah, they're thoroughly okay.
Thoroughly, that's
okay.
what I agree.
Okay.
They are very average.
Yeah.
Do you think like the originals are better? Like, do you think it's like nostalgia playing into that factor?
I think there's a bit of a transfer when it comes to looking at the Disney reboots, a lot of people have talked about them for a while. And I think the issue is that there's certain things that can be done with animation that just can't really be depicted that well in live action. And also it's just, once you have once you have an image in your head, it's very tough to change that. Like, let's do Beauty and the Beast, which I think made $1.4 billion or something like that. And the first Beauty and the Beast was also very successful. When you see it for the first time and you see the animated one, that's Belle. But, looking at the reboot, you see Hermione.
Yeah.
So I think it becomes a weird thing for imagination. And then also when there's a natural thing of when you're trying to reboot something that already has, Academy Awards, that already has made a ton of money and has already, done that. And now the reboots, I think, are getting a little weird where, I never thought they would do Moana. I'm going to guess Frozen is going to.
I feel like Moana is like, because I think the original reason for like reboots in the first place was that every generation could experience
Moana just happened.
right.
Well, that is the dumbest cash grab I've ever seen.
Yeah.
And it's like, and also I think Dwayne Johnson's going to be playing his character, which doesn't really fit because that guy is supposed to be 22 or something. Like, he's supposed to be young, and Dwayne Johnson's going to be like 50 when it comes out.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but I am happy that they're using the original voice actor for Moana, I've heard. I'm not sure if it's
Okay.
confirmed yet, but they're thinking about it, which
I mean, I would almost not be shocked if there was doing the Moana reboot because they're doing Lilo and Stitch as well. I would not be surprised if it was just an attempt to reuse the sets. I'm like, oh, we're filming in Hawaii. We've got this. Let's just throw this in too.
Yeah.
Right. that seems
Disney's
like-
going quantity over quality right now.
But like I feel like it was kind of different, like say 10 years ago when like you first see like the Alice in Wonderland reboot. Like that's probably my favorite, and I actually prefer that over the animated movie.
Well, that made $1 billion. That was really weird to see Johnny Depp like that. I was like,
Yeah.
because I always thought Johnny Depp looked very strange as Willy Wonka, and then I saw like the Mad Hatter. I'm like,
Right.
Tim Burton was just having fun. Like they were doing that. The sequel did very poorly though, and that's kind of where I see an issue with Disney reboots, where financially, and this, I wrote an article on this like a year ago. The first ones do very well, and this goes back all the way to 101 Dalmatians in the 2000s, which was like the live action reboot of that. The first ones tend to make a lot of money, but then the sequels make no money at all. And I can't think of one where it's like they did the live action reboot and then they made a sequel of it that'll makes money. I know they're doing the Mufasa movie right now, which I don't know if people want to call that live action or not because it's technically CGI. And I like the thing about that is it's something where I think when it comes to the Disney, these sequels and so on, or prequels in this case, I'm not really sure how well they're going to do. I mean, The Lion King, I believe, was over 1.5 billion at the box office for the 2019 film, but I'm not 100% sold. It's like, okay, this prequel is going to work. I think it'll do well, but it's unclear. And then there's also like the question of what really is because I always kind of thought that they were only going to do the 2D films and make them live action.
Yeah.
Now Moana is like, okay, we're now doing CGI films. Does this mean they're going to try in 10 years to do a live action Monsters Inc. movie or a live action Toy Story?
I really hope not, honestly.
That
Scary.
would suck.
I think we like share your like take on this. Like I definitely
apprehensive about it.
like I'm
Yeah.
very like apprehensive about like any like like clear or like cash grab by like the film industry. It feels like just like a recycling of like ideas, and it's hard, especially to support it when like there's rarely a time where it's like done right, or like where it grabs me, because I don't know, it just feels like the charm of like Disney is gone in these remakes, and it's just like, just put money in, put like the star-studded cast in, and it's just this like billion-dollar piece of garbage.
Yeah, and I get Disney has this war chest of franchises, but like I look at Disney Plus and it seems like all they want to do is pump out Star Wars and Marvel content.
Yeah.
And like Star Wars has kind of become like the McDonald's of movie franchises. Like there's like freaking 10 shows they're working on right now. And I saw the Obi-Wan series. It's the only one I've watched. I didn't watch Mandalorian. I saw the Obi-Wan show, and I thought the first episode was very impressive, but then it just gets so much cheaper as it went on. And I'm like, wow, I can't believe they made this.
Yeah. I feel like also something personally, like I feel like if you're gonna remake a movie, it should be like within a reasonable amount of time. We touched upon that earlier.
Right.
Like something maybe I want to see, like Fox and the Hound reboot, Aristocrats, like bring back like the old like classics that people like really don't know about anymore.
I found it interesting that you were talking about 101 Dalmatians, because like the sequel, it's kind of a sequel, like
102.
Cruella.
Oh, Cruella.
Prequel.
My favorite live action Disney remake I think they've done.
Oh,
Which-
I agree. That was the best one by far.
Exactly.
Because that was actually, because it wasn't really a reboot. It was actually different, and it was. I think it was PG-13, right? It was like a little bit more mature. When I heard the pitch is like Devil Wears Prada meets 101 Dalmatians, I'm like I'm sold. And there's some parts of it that look a little cheap, but I think overall they did a great job. I know there's going to be a sequel to it. I think Emma Stone was perfect for the role. But then there's some stuff that I actually think should get a reboot. Disney has never, under their own studio, done a rated R movie. I think Hunchback of Notre Dame they should do like the Victor Hugo book and make that rated R and still incorporate some of the musical elements. Another one is this. I think they should do a Emperor's New Groove movie.
Oh yeah,
That movie is so underrated.
And then have Wes Anderson direct it.
Oh,
because
Crazy.
that'd be
I
great.
feel like some of it doesn't translate well over to, as you said before, like animation and live action. Like I don't want like Disney to ruin like the I don't know, the
magic of
liveliness.
I don't think they would take away from that. I feel like the thing about it with Wes Anderson is the reason why I've always thought Emperor's New Groove and Wes Anderson kind of work together is Wes Anderson's directing style is very clearly built on symmetry. He loves symmetry, which Emperor's New Groove's animation style is in. And then it's also, he's a very colorful director when he wants to be. So I feel like it would work perfectly, and also weirdness. And the other reason is, even though Emperor's New Groove might be like my favorite 2D animated Disney movie, it has a weird thing where it's like, I feel like it could actually use an extra 5 to 15 minutes of story. Like there's some parts where I feel like there's not enough plot going on, and I think it could actually work better. A lot of people have proposed Atlantis, the Lost Empire, but then there's also another thing I was going to bring up regarding this is, this is also something I've thought for 5 years. I'm really shocked that this idea hasn't been like formally proposed or like done, a Kingdom Hearts movie with live action, because I just would kind of assume where it's like, okay, you have Will Smith as the genie, you have Emma Stone as Cruella. You just kind of, it would make a lot of sense, like the event, because they had so much success with the Avengers. Now it's like, okay, we're putting in, and also it could be kind of weird. Like you could have Jack Sparrow meet the Mad Hatter, and it's both Johnny Depp. And it would be a very weird thing. Like I don't think it would serve in the movie's canons, but I think it could work.
I think that would take a while. I think they're gonna do like the remakes first, and then they'll make it into like this whole like and everybody meets everybody type of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, but what is left to reboot? They've done it all.
Moana apparently, and
Yeah.
also like I don't know.
Frozen coming up too.
Frozen, oh
I
my
bet Frozen's gonna
God.
be huge.
I feel like they are going to reboot Frozen, and it's just not gonna work. I just don't. It'll make money, but I just don't see
I think
like the
part might attract a lot of people, but like I don't understand like why. Like it's gonna be too soon, but I feel like it's
Too
gonna be
soon.
fantastical. So maybe
Well,
that's the thing that I'm
It's
looking
been
forward
10
to.
years.
well, like with
It's been 10
with
years.
Disney, it's like I also just kind of wish like when they did Disney Plus, I was like kind of sitting there like, why are they doing 10 of these Star Wars shows? Like, I mean, because I think like one of my favorite Disney's movies is The Parent Trap. I like or Holes with Shia LaBeouf. Those I actually both really like. I'm like, couldn't they, like, if they're gonna reboot, why not just reboot those as series? Like, I think a Parent Trap series would make a lot of sense as like a family sitcom. I think Holes, which is just, I don't know if you guys have ever seen that movie, but that's like a just very underrated Disney film that is better than it had a right to be, in my opinion. Like, I would have just guessed that would be like bad Disney Channel movie. It is actually really well done.
Given the amount of like Disney reboots you've seen, like what would you rate as like your worst, and what would you rate as like the best?
Ooh, that's a fun one. Well, Corello's the best one. I mean, because
He was
they
very nervous
Yeah.
about that.
Ren's got
well,
it.
no, because they did something unique. Emma Stone really nailed it. It was like a PG-13, which was nice to see. The worst one, though, and I don't know if this is necessarily the worst one, but it's the worst one to me in terms of a step down. It's going to be Lion King.
Yeah,
Yes, 100%. I agree with that.
But is that even live action though? Because they said it was live action, but it's not.
I know it's like that little gray area, especially because like the main thing for me is like I couldn't see any facial expressions.
Right, that was
yeah.
It was well. It was also just like, if you're gonna do it animated, because they're both still technically animated. It's just one is like a live action animation. Is it like, I think the first one looks a lot better. Like,
I'm just gonna ask, like, what do you think are like the components of like a great reboot? Like, what makes it good? What makes it bad?
I'm trying to think of so there's one movie that I would say has there's probably a few movies that have better reboots than the original. One is True Grit, which the Coen brothers did in 2009, I want to say. It was Haley Steinfeld's breakout role, and Jeff Bridges is in the role. And that's something where Jeff Bridges is going against what the hell is his name? John Wayne, who's like the biggest cowboy actor of like the 20th century. And I think Jeff Bridges did a better role because they changed the ending entirely. They actually made it a darker film, and they did something very different, and it works. So I think a reboot should only exist. Like, I feel like for Disney, they're just trying to kind of like, it's either a technology point of view, or it's it, because originally I think reboots were sort of like, oh, hey, this was a really cool movie in the 1960s, let's give it CGI, let's give it a big budget, let's give it technology. But now it's like, I think to reboot something, you have to give it a different story. um and that's kind of why, like, Hunchback of Notre Dame might be right for the reboot, because I mean, and anyone can reboot that movie. Disney doesn't. That's a public domain book by Victor Hugo. But Disney, because they have the songs and things like that, they could take elements of their kids film of that, but then give the real treatment of the book. So I think the best thing is just, can you change up the story? And that's what Cruella did. It changed the story, and it was something that was, it was fun. And I can't say, like, I'm trying to think of like where sort of the average beauty, like, sorry, not, I used to say beauty with this, like, that's kind of the average one, I feel, where I don't think it's as good as the original, but it's not like bad. Like, Lion King is the only one I look at where I'm like, wow, that sucked.
Yeah, and I feel like something that just popped in my head right now is like I feel like Disney might even go as far to like reboot like shows. Like I could totally see like Phineas and Ferb being like a sitcom and like make it more like less PG-13 and make it more like interesting in that sense.
Well, that one I'm a little too old for. Like, I never really saw that, but I know what that is. I know they rebooted Kim Possible, which I liked as a kid, but that was like a very cheap thing though. Like, I think they could have made a good like movie, Kim Possible, made like a Mission Impossible film or something, but instead they just like made it like a very Disney Channel type movie, and it was really, really cheap.
They also rebooted like strangely like DuckTales.
Oh,
They did?
Yeah.
Well, in animation, but so I watched that one because I was a fan of DuckTales as a
right.
kid, and I did watch the new one. I think the new one might actually be better. Like, they're both very strong. Oh, that's a controversial thing to say, but it's like they gave it more of a running story, and I like how like the ducks have a little bit more personality. They're both really good though. Like, they are both really good. But for rebooting cartoons and turning them into live action, I'm trying to think of like some Disney, because I was more of a Cartoon Network, Nickelodeon kid. I'm trying to think of some really popular like Disney cartoons. Um, I mean, obviously they could just do Winnie the Pooh. They tried that with the Ewan McGregor film Christopher Robin.
Robin.
That was actually not a bad Disney reboot. That was a unique story. It was a little weird, but it was like, what?
The horror Winnie the Pooh wasn't by Disney, right?
No, no, no. So Winnie the Pooh is in the So the genius of Disney has always been kind of like taking the public domain.
Yeah.
And so like I mean that was like like Tarzan was public domain, Cinderella, Beauty and the not Beauty and the Beast is original, but a lot of their stuff was in the public domain when they started it, but then they start adding their own songs and so on, and now people see it as a Disney brand. But Winnie the Pooh just entered the public domain. So Walt Disney is one of the final deals before he passed away in the early 60s, bought the rights to Winnie the Pooh, and they've lost, those rights. But at the same time, it's a very weird thing with how Disney does it. So like, for example, anyone can make a Winnie the Pooh movie now, but nobody can do the red shirt like what they can. So it's like it's weird how it works. Like Batman, I think in 20 years goes into the public domain, but then Robin wouldn't go into the public domain for another 20 years after that. And Harley Quinn won't go in the public domain for 80 years. So we live in a kind of weird world with that. It's like, but then also someone could make a Batman movie and introduce a new villain or sidekick or whatever, and they'll own the rights on that, and Warner Brothers doesn't. So it's very weird how the rights on this works. But going back into the whole reboot territory of like cartoons, I'm trying to think of like some Disney, like give me a few Disney cartoons that are popular.
Disney cartoons.
Yeah, all I could think of
is Phineas and
Ferb.
That's
Like
the only one.
that's
Well, I
the
know that was like their like SpongeBob almost kind of thing. Like that was like their like.
is
I mean, Kim Possible was undeniably a hit. Like a lot of like when I was a kid, like a lot of people really liked that one.
No,
I also does we got a phone? We got like someone's got to like Google like Disney cartoons here because there's bound to be some good reboots.
there's
these are not.
Kim Possible. There's
That is.
there's not a lot, honestly. I mean, it doesn't look like it at least.
Yeah, like
That's newer.
Wait.
I mean,
Andy Mandy.
I'm sure there's a couple Cartoon Network and Nickelodeon shows I think would be good live action. I don't know if you guys ever heard of Grim Adventures of Billy and Mandy.
Yes.
That should just Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends should also be just a live action thing. I'd get Tim Burton to direct that. But I don't think cartoon what
I sorry. I always I don't know why, but I always think Tim Burton's has died. I never.
I never took their hand.
he just did Wednesday. He just
I
did
know, I
Wednesday.
know. It's always like
Well-
it's such an old timey name. You just think like
There's a couple shows that I look at and I'm like, I'm just convinced that they took like someone else's screenplay and they said, hey, here's money for this, but we're going to turn this into something new. I really think for like Wednesday, they were just kind of like, oh, hey, let's do like Harry Potter, but gothic. And then somehow it became a Wednesday show. Like there was Lightyear. Like it was strange because I wrote an article 5 years ago about why Pixar should do a Lightyear movie. And then they do it, it loses $100 million, and because it was the most boring thing ever. It felt more like Interstellar, but it just doesn't work because it's Buzz Lightyear. And I think I was like writing that I was like, oh, they should just do it about like he has to save like those Pizza Planet alien guys, and there's one who wants to be a stormtrooper. He has a broken antenna, so he feels different. And like they ended like I was kind of sitting there, it was like it sounds like gimmicky, but it's like they ended up with like a very boring movie for Lightyear. So and yeah, now I'm also afraid they're going to live action reboot the Pixar movies. Like I feel like Disney will do that in 5-10 years.
All right.
I hope
Yeah.
so. Right. The Pixar movies are yeah.
But I don't know. Does Toy Story need a live action reboot? Like I feel like
But like I'm trying to think of some what are some like Up.
Up, yeah.
No, it's been long enough. It's well
doesn't
loved.
that have that like new thing with like Carl going on his first date after her?
Yes, that is coming out
That's
soon.
not
It's
live
just
action,
short though.
How old is that man supposed to be? Is he?
Okay, well, let's not talk about the
Like
Oh, he's past his prime on that. Any more questions I got?
I think we're just
I think we're
about
just
out of time
out of
because
time.
of the camera.
Okay, out of time.
Talking to us today.
Really appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
All right, cool. Thanks for having me.
It was so great talking to you. Thank you so much. We hope to see you soon.